Right. Hi guys.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Yes,
My name is Yashvi Hura, and I serve as the Deputy Convener of Center for Litigation Studies. I am joined by Ms. Ria Mehta and Ojasaf, who Ria is the convener of the center, and Ojasaf is my co-convener, co-deputy convener, and I'm also joined by a few senior and junior members of the center. And we all collectively welcome you and thank you for taking out the time from your busy schedule for this interview today.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
So,
I can understand the feeling. I've been on the other side also. So I can understand the feeling. And it's very good to see the center going so strong.
thank you, sir. And with this, I'll proceed to my first question, which is that how would you like to describe yourself?
I professionally I'm an advocate. I practice primarily before the Rajasthan High Court, but we go everywhere in all the forums. And as a human being, perhaps a good human being. Yeah.
So, sir, could you please tell us the factors that motivated you to take up law as a career option?
Of course. So the first and foremost factor was my grandfather. My grandfather was a High Court judge. He was the acting Chief Justice of Rajasthan in his time. So unfortunately, I never got to see him as a judge, but I got to see him as an arbitrator and as the chairperson of a lot of commissions. So when I was in school, it looked like a glorious life. And that was the first and foremost factor. The second factor was when, in fact, I joined law, the law coaching, I realized that it is a very practical subject. And that is what drove me towards this field. And the most practical aspect of law is litigation. So that was my first choice.
What was your experience at NLU Jodhpur? Like, what was the one thing in college that you enjoyed the most?
Enjoyed the most, that was the company of my peers. The best thing about our college is that it gives us a platform to interact with people from a wide, uh, diverse backgrounds. You not only meet people of a particular type, you meet people of varied cultures, varied uh, diversities, and everything. So that in itself is an experience altogether. And another great thing about our college is the hostel culture. So, for example, I used to live in RBP, and there was interaction between seniors and juniors. On my floor, when I was in my first year, there were fifth years living, there were third years living. So you get to interact with your seniors. And if you ask me, the best thing about NLU is this interaction, because you will realize that even if bunch of people are sitting and enjoying themselves and having a good time, if they're having a conversation, then there is some rhyme and rhythm to that conversation. There's something you are getting to learn from that conversation, whether that's their oratory skills, whether that's some information, whether it's just wisdom from seniors. And that interaction helps you not only in your college life, but also after your college life. So, for example, if I'm doing, say, a matter in Jodhpur, or if I'm doing a matter in Bangalore, I am it's all because of this interaction that I've had with seniors, or for that matter, if I'm having a matter in Chandigarh, I just need to call up the senior who's practicing there, and they are willing to help us. And that is the best part about our college, I believe, that the connect between seniors and juniors, and the connect between students and alumni. Alumni, I think, are our best resource of the college.
And so, as I see that after your law school, you had worked with a senior advocate for 1 year. and then you joined a law firm as an associate, and thereafter you started your independent practice.
Yeah.
So how has working in these different roles shaped your career and journey as a lawyer?
Sure. So the first thing is that law firm was also a litigating law firm. So I never switched to corporate law as such. It was, although there was corporate work, it was primarily a litigating law firm. My journey, I can say it's exhilarating. It's, I mean, it has of course helped me where I am today. Uh, how the process has helped me perhaps is that at a senior's office, there are limited opportunities that you get to appear, because if a client is paying hefty fee for a senior, they don't want to see a junior Pranjul Chopra appear and argue their matter. But then if that senior is preparing a matter, if that senior is preparing the file, if they're having a conversation with the client, if there is a conference or if there is a discussion, then there's a lot to learn from a senior. So I started my practice under Mr. R.K. Agarwal sir. He's a designated senior here in the Rajasthan High Court. And his specialty is property law, and he does commercial and arbitration matters also. So I got to learn specifically civil law is this is my opinion, that you can learn civil law only by practicing. CPC you can study in college, that's fine, but until unless you practice it, and that might be true for other fields of law, but I primarily found it for civil law, that until unless you practice it, you will not realize the nuances, you will not realize the nitty-gritties of civil law. So that is what I got to learn at the senior's office, how to interact with the clients, how to be presentable, because he was very particular. If you were not presentable, he would send you off home. He would ask us to, dress up properly, perhaps polish our shoes, and then come back again to the court. So he was very particular about these things. He made sure that we made our own individual notes of every file. So even if we had to appear just to take a passover or take an adjournment, if the court asked us any query, then we could answer that query in brief and perhaps tell that the senior is coming. So that showed the court that A, we were prepared, but because we did not have the instructions from the client, we could not argue the matter ourselves. And it also helped us prepare in general, help us learn the law. Then when I joined the law firm, so to speak, it's actually a very small law firm, and it's primarily a litigation law firm. The best thing about that is that it's being run by young people. So Ashish ji and Vagish ji are both NLS grads from 2012 and 2013. And they're very encouraging. So the best part about their office was that whatever I learned at the senior's office, I got to apply that in their office. So from drafting to arguing to handling a client, it was open for everything. So even if there was a client conference, we used to perhaps handle a few clients ourselves. We drafted the entire thing. Of course, it was checked by the seniors, but we drafted the entire petitions. We made sure that, we decided what annexures to put and what annexures not to put. And sometimes that becomes really crucial in a case. So that is how we got to learn a lot. And we got to implement, I got to implement what I learned at the senior's office at their office. And that actually helped me when I started my own practice. It wasn't a very big transition. It was just that I shifted from one office to the other. That's about it. And in that also, all my bosses, and I've got 3 bosses because Capstone is run by 2 bosses and the senior, all my bosses have been really encouraging in my initial years. And this is again one very important thing that this is my opinion, that for anybody to grow in this field, help of seniors is a must. I am fortunate to have come across seniors who've been extremely encouraging. Till today, if I've got any, if there is any query regarding any particular field of law, I can approach my seniors. They are willing to help me in a lot of times free of charge. They've appeared on my insistence for clients at unusually low rates as per their standards. And at the same time, even if it is my case and they see me arguing in court, they make sure sometimes to just come up and say an encouraging word, or sometimes to just come up and say that you could have said this thing like this and the judge could have been convinced better or earlier. So my experience overall with my seniors has been really encouraging. And there's one more person that I would like to take the name of, and he is Mr. Nipun Singhvi. He is in Ahmedabad. He, after I got in contact with him only after I got independent, and it is primarily because of him that my practice is running. He's been a mentor to me in a way no other person has been, and in fact, he's guided my career. So, in such a manner, he's just guided, and through his wisdom, he's told me how to approach a particular case. And just through that, he's multiplied my cases. Without giving me a single case, he's built my entire practice. So that is where the senior component comes in.
Absolutely, sir. Support from peers as well as seniors is very essential.
Yes.
And sir, you've been practicing in the Rajasthan High Court along with courts in other states. So how difficult is it to practice before multiple courts simultaneously? And how do you maintain your work-life balance?
So how does it, to answer the first part of your question, yes, I practice in other states. I've been fortunate to appear in Delhi, in Bombay, in a few forums, in Bangalore, in Gujarat, and other states also. And of course, Rajasthan, Jaipur, Jodhpur, and other smaller cities. How did I manage that? As I told you in the beginning, it's all because of NLU. Our alumni base is so strong that wherever you get a matter, anybody is just a call away. So if there is a matter in Chandigarh, there's a senior who's willing to help me in filing, and I only have to go and appear. If there's a matter in Bangalore, there's a senior. He's my super senior. I've never met him, but he's been kind enough to help me throughout. In Jodhpur, there's a super senior. He's the second. He's a senior from the second batch of our college. So the alumni network really helps in this, in this diverse practice, going to different states and everything. Work-life balance, I think that depends on individual to individual. Once you start your own practice, you can decide your own times. Of course, when you're attached to a senior, their office timings are your timings. And honestly, I am perhaps not the best example of a work-life balance. My senior used to sit in the office till 12:31 on a usual day, and if a day was hard, then there was no limit to it. And in my office also, fortunately or unfortunately, we have that. If on a usual day we sit till 10:30, 11, and even after we go back to our homes, we are usually working. So I don't think that there is much work-life balance, but I think that as one grows in the profession, then they have that liberty to decide how much time they want to devote to any particular stream. There's also that you keep interacting with a lot of people. So in a way that helps you maintain that work-life balance. So because you're not sitting behind a desk throughout the day, you're going to the court, you're interacting with people there, you're meeting clients, you're meeting other people, you're attending conferences. So that helps you maintain an overall work-life balance. But on a day-to-day basis, if you're talking, then there's not much of a work-life balance.
briefly talk about one of the most memorable and interesting cases that you got to work on?
There are many that I can think of the top of my head, but one being it was an issue related to quorum of the Rajasthan real estate. I mean, the Real Estate Regulatory Authority. So RERA is a new law, and there was a matter pending in various high courts. Ultimately, it was decided by the Supreme Court. So the interesting part of that case was that already there were a lot of matters pending before the Rajasthan High Court, and the Supreme. I think that Punjab and Haryana High Court had decided, had taken a particular view, and the Allahabad High Court had taken an opposite view. And we were appearing for the builders in the Rajasthan High Court, primarily the builders in the Rajasthan High Court. Allahabad High Court was, of course, against us, and Punjab and Haryana judgment favored us. There was a new filing. Of course, cases kept on increasing, new builders kept on joining that bunch of petitions. So I think that there were over 70, 80 matters filed by different builders. On one fine day, the Supreme Court delivered its judgment. I think that was 11th of November 2021. It delivered its judgment, the new tech judgment. And on 14th, we had a matter listed. And fortunately, mine was the first case in that bunch of petitions. It was a fresh matter. And at that time, it was listed before the Chief Justice's court. So the Chief Justice was a very encouraging man. Justice Akhil Qureshi, he recently retired. He was really encouraging, especially towards young advocates. So when my time came, he asked me to start with the matter. So I briefly told what the matter was. And then I told that, sir, there's a recent Supreme Court judgment which goes against me, but I would want to distinguish it. So he got a smirk on his face. Okay, what is the distinguish? How would you want to distinguish the matter? And this, I think, is a good quality in any judge, that even though they're so sparse of time, and if Supreme Court has already decided the matter, they need not hear it, and they can simply dismiss the petition in light of that order. But he was so encouraging that he gave me the time of the day. I argued for some 15 minutes and I distinguished the matter. And he was kind enough to grant me a stay that day. And we were saved at least on that day. Next day, again, a similar petition was listed. He again made a few queries and a few clarifications from the previous day. And again, he granted me a stay at that time. Subsequently, all the petitions were listed and they were dismissed. It was argued by a senior advocate, and we got an opportunity to assist him. They were finally dismissed. But the interesting part was that you became part of a history where law is laid down. You also got an opportunity to argue before an exceptional judge. Everybody in the country knows that Justice Qureshi is an exceptional judge. He was kind enough to give me the time, even when the Supreme Court had decided against us. And after that, we got to, a lot of advocates, we came together and we discussed these matters, and finally we argued it. So that was a really interesting time. Those 5-7 months when these petitions were going on, that was a really interesting time. That's perhaps one of the most interesting cases I worked on till date.
So you mentioned RERA just now, and you also have published a number of articles on RERA.
Yeah.
So what evoked your interest in this particular?
That's perhaps one of the most interesting cases I worked on till date.
So you mentioned RERA just now, and you also have published a number of articles on RERA.
Yeah.
So what evoked your interest in this particular subject matter, and what do you think is the way forward to address the plight of the home buyers and assigning liability on the defaulting real estate developers?
Okay, so this is a heavy question. The first part of the question is, how did my interest come in RERA. I did not choose RERA, RERA chose me. So as soon as I got out of the college, when I joined the seniors chamber, uh, I told you he was very encouraging. So he allowed us to take our individual matters. And my first matter came from two of my closest friends from NLU. So they referred a matter to me, and that was a matter related to RERA. And RERA in Rajasthan, in most of the states, was established in 2017. I got my first matter in 2018 from these two friends of mine from NLU. So that is how I came across the law. Till such a time, I had absolutely no clue that such a law existed. I got the matter, read on it, prepared the complaint, argued it, won the case, and from there on, this journey with RERA started. My interest developed a lot more in that field because of the mentor that I mentioned, Mr. Nipun Singhvi. He is an authority in IBC in anyways, but he does a lot of work in RERA also. And there was a question of law, and which was pending before various high courts during the COVID, that related to extensions being given to the builders during the COVID period. So we filed a PIL together. We filed a PIL, and again I got an opportunity to argue at that time before the Chief Justice, and that is where, when you argue a matter and you get a favorable order, then again a few matters come to you, and that is how the journey started. So after that, I've been fortunate to work on a lot of RERA matters. I think I worked on approximately 80 to 100 RERA matters till now. And I've written a lot of articles because it is a new law. It is a new evolving law. So there are a lot of new questions that keep arising. And I mean, a lot of times either it is just decided by a court, or you can either, you think that the judgment is right or not, and you can write an article on that, or it is a question that needs to be answered and you want to, hype that discussion. So anyhow, you can write the articles. It becomes easier that way. Then to address your second question, that how do you put the liability on defaulting builders? I think that Maharashtra RERA is doing a tremendous job at that. Maharashtra, and I'm told Haryana RERA also. See, unless a court can execute its orders, it is a paper worth not its value, and or it's a court without any teeth. So unless a court can execute its orders properly, the law will not be as effective as it is intended to be. What I believe is that either there should be some model laws by the central government. So the central government has already given a central act. What they can perhaps do is provide some model rules and regulations. There are talks of model agreement going on. It's still not out there. Sooner or later, we will have some model agreement for sale and sale agreements. When that comes, and when an order is passed by an authority, the next step is execution of that. So a major problem that we are facing in Rajasthan is that although we get favors, although we get favorable orders for the allottees, ultimately it takes a lot of time for them to get their money back, even after winning that case. And they have to go through that entire process of executing that order. The ultimate aim behind RERA is to simplify the process as it was earlier before the civil courts. And a major drawback of the civil courts was that the time taken in first deciding a matter and then getting the order executed. So it implements those orders. And I think what Maharashtra RERA is doing is that it is issuing warrants against the defaulting builders. and it is making recovery. A good thing that Rajasthan RERA did in one of the matters, did not follow up as much as I perhaps would like, is that it attached a property of a builder and forced him to either return the money or take possession of their property and then either complete it itself or sell it to a third party. So the builder was forced into implementing the order. So because it is a new authority, it is in its nascent stages. If it can implement its orders well, then I think that the legislation will reach its intended target.
So, what do you think is the right time for a law student to choose any specific field? And is it necessary to choose one before graduating from law school?
Definitely not. In fact, I till date I have no field of my own. I do all kinds of matters, not just litigation matters, corporate matters also, uh, corporate transactions also. So I don't think that anybody should restrict themselves to a particular field. I am from Fali Nariman School of Thought. Fali Nariman is a fierce propagator of young advocates should not decide any field of law. He jokingly said that I come across juniors who say that I'm a tax expert, and they themselves say that we are experts in that field. Whereas what he suggests is that a young advocate should do all kinds of matters, and eventually over 10, 15, 20 years, you will start getting, say, one particular type of matters more than the other. But one should not, in their early stages, the first 5-10 years, they should not decide on any particular field of law and do anything and everything, because that teaches you a lot. Going to different forums, going to different fora will teach you a lot. Going to different courts, or perhaps interacting with different kinds of people, learning different laws. So, for example, if there is in a civil matter, if somebody has made a misleading statement, then you ultimately have to attach criminal liability. So you will have to read criminal law. So you can't say that I'm a civil lawyer, I don't know what the criminal law is. So you have to read every law in the beginning, and then let the field choose you rather than choosing the field.
So, can you please throw some light on the initial struggles which a fresh entrant in the field of litigation faces? And also, what things should one focus on to survive and thrive in the initial years as a litigator, especially for first generation lawyers?
The first thing, in the first week of my practice, my boss, the senior advocate at that time, he told me one thing, and that I think is crucial to any advocate. He said that a good advocate knows what to speak and also knows what not to speak. So in the court of law, one must always, as a fresh entrant, we are very enthusiastic and we always want to say something before the court. It might or might not help the client. So one should, while sitting in the court, while listening to seniors, what one must learn is what to say, how to convince a judge, but also what not to say. Second is that impressions do matter. So you, as a fresh and entrant, you might not have a lot of cases, but what is in your hand is showing your presence and showing it well. How you do that is by going to the court regularly. This is again another habit that the senior inculcated in us, that even if you are free between 10 to 1 or 10:30 to 1 on any particular day, you have to be in the court, you have to be sitting in a court, and you have to be listening to somebody or the other. You have to sit in a court, you have to make notes. That achieves two purposes. First is that you get to learn something or the other. Second is that your presence is marked, that such and such person comes to the court every single day. And there might be some, litigant running here and there who's looking for a lawyer in the court and might bump into you, or a senior might just take pity on you and give you a case to argue, or you might just have to help a colleague and take an adjournment and then mark your presence before the court. So it helps you in that. What also helps is the impression that you create on others, and that includes how you dress up, how you speak, how polite or impolite you are. So patience is a virtue that every advocate must have. You have to have abundance of patience when you are interacting with the client. You have to understand what they're saying, you have to let them speak, and sometimes a client will speak a lot of things which are not necessary to their case, but they want to vent it out. They think that it might be important for the advocate to argue the matter. So you have to let him speak, you have to hear him entirely, patiently. And then when you appear before a court, there is no chance that you lose your patience. Not in the beginning of your career, and not in ultimately not even in the later stages of your career. You can't afford to be impatient with the judge. Ultimately, he is the judge. So your duty is to convince him. And you can't do it by being impatient or by being angry with the judge or by being impolite with the judge. So these are a few things that one must keep in mind from day one. And people are noticing when you pass through those same faces every single day, then knowingly or unknowingly an impression is created. And if you are loud mouth, or if somebody is chit chatting or laughing loudly in the corridors of the court, then that is not looked up in this profession. So it is advisable that you're presentable when you go, you're polite, you sit in the court and learn. And once you do that as an early entrant, whether you're a first generation lawyer or whether you're a second, third generation lawyer, everybody has to go through this process. Of course, it is a bit harder for first generation lawyers. I can't fully call myself a first generation lawyer. Nobody in my family has practiced law. My grandfather also never practiced a single day in his life. He was a RS officer, RJS officer, and then a High Court judge. So as I had to start my practice from the scratch, and what I realized in the process is that matters first flow from word of mouth. So for example, I got my first cases from my friends from NLU. Somebody might get it from a relative of theirs. So that interaction with the society is also necessary. You can't be aloof from the society and say that, I will get matters on my merit. Merit will be shown when you interact with somebody, when you get to appear in a matter. And for that, you have to be open to anything and everything, including taking an adjournment on somebody else's behalf. That is giving you time in front of the judge. That is giving you some podium time. So all of that ultimately helps you. And that my advice to first generation lawyers is that choose your senior well. Who you are starting your practice with, or which chamber do you come from, makes a lot of difference in the court. So if you join somebody who's a little notorious, who's known for scrupulous means, then you not only tend to learn those means, even if you don't learn them, there's an impression in front of the court that you come from such and such chamber, and then you might employ such means even when you don't. So it is extremely important to choose a senior well. That might involve going to a court, spending time there, spending a month there, perhaps realizing who's a good senior to work with, requesting them to join their chambers. Another attribute to that is that they should have a vacancy to take you. So what you can do is request. It's not that there's only one good advocate in the entire court. There might be several, and one or the other is always looking for a fresh entrant or somebody who they can employ, and that is where you just have to hit at the right time.
So our last question for the interview was slightly covered by your response in the previous question.
Yeah.
And that question is that what advice would you give to students like us who are passionate about pursuing a career in litigation?
Sincerity, hard work, I think these are very cliched terms, but I think that helps a lot. Hard work, of course, in the right direction. Sincerity towards your work, because everybody again is observing you. Even a reader sitting in a court is observing you, and he might have a matter where he perhaps a relative of his has some matter, and he asks, I don't have a lot of money to spend, so please suggest me a young advocate. So if you're sincere in your work, people notice and they will refer you cases ultimately. Another thing is being up to date with the law. Today we have got a lot of resources. You have to decide on one particular resource. For example, I have one particular app which I use to read latest case laws, and then I keep on reading the SCCs which come, as and when they come. So that habit is very necessary. Being up to date with law is very necessary. And as I said, impression and that how you present yourself and how much you socialize, and that all of those factors contribute ultimately. But another thing is a good platform for us in colleges is the internships. So usually we spend internships, having a good time, chilling. That's part of it, and we should be doing that. I totally encourage that. But what we should also keep at the back of our mind is that even if we can learn one thing from our senior, perhaps their sincerity, perhaps how they prepare their file, because be rest assured we have absolutely no knowledge of law when we enter the field. It's a clean slate. Whatever you've learned is theory, but we have absolutely no clue how to apply it practically. So we have to start with a clean slate. But during internships, we have the platform to, meet with different advocates, and we can pick up things. So we can always start from there, from the internships, and that might ease the process when we get into the field. And we just keep on listening to successful advocates, how their journey was, what all they had to go through. Perhaps you come across a similar instance and you have some guidance from them. For example, there was a matter where I was stuck, and I remember listening to one of the senior advocates from the Bombay High Court, and he had a similar instance in his early days, and how he ultimately helped him close the client and win the case. And I tried to employ that same tactic, and it really helped me. The case is still going on, so the verdict is out, but it helped me at least close the client. So all of those factors, ultimately, there are a lot of factors which come into play. If you do a bit of everything, I think that ultimately helps you. Ultimately helps either your fresh entrant or your second generation or a third generation work.
Thank you so much, sir. This session was very helpful for students like us who dream to pursue litigation in the future. And if Ria and Ujasa, do you have anything to add here?
Thank you so much, sir. The session was truly enlightening, to say the least. Sir, I have one question to ask you. Sir, if there's one advice you could give to your younger self, for Pranjul 5 years back, struggling in law school like we are struggling today, managing our academics, internships, and everything else?
One advice I would give is perhaps enjoy the college a bit more. We tend to take everything very seriously. I did not most of the times, but whatever little academics I took seriously, I would advise myself to take it less seriously and enjoy the time in college. Because the bonds that you create with your peers in college, they go a long way, rather than the academics and the numbers that you achieve there.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a great session. It was great to have you on board, and we are very assured that it will help the readers when we publish it on our website, and if this interview goes on the YouTube as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Wonderful interacting with anybody from college, and looking at such young people, I feel a little old. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful time in college, whatever time is left for you guys in the college. I hope that you guys have a wonderful time. I think that most of you are in your 4th years. There's still a couple of years to go. I would advise that you enjoy it to the fullest. Academics is necessary, marks are important, but they are not the end of it all. Job is not the end of it all. There's always something or the other for everybody. And everybody, this is what I've realized, that anybody from our college ultimately find their way in life. They'll do something or the other, but they'll find some way in life. So be rest assured that you will not go hungry in future.
So one last thing, there are some 30 members who have joined us today. So if there's any question that they want to ask.
Of course. Rishabh is also a Chopra.
I don't think they have any questions. Thank you so much, sir.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody, for inviting me. Yashvi, Ria, Ojas, everybody, thank you so much. It was a wonderful time interacting with everybody. I hope that I could contribute even in the slightest if possible. And it was a pleasure, and thank you again for inviting.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.